Hi guys, today we are going to be talking about similarity statements, which help us determine which sides are corresponding to each other when things are maybe not so cut and dry, and you might not be able to tell based on the way that the shapes look, like we were doing yesterday. A similarity statement is used to represent the fact that two shapes are similar, and they use the symbol squiggly line, okay? How that kind of relates is way back when we said that two things were congruent, or two side lengths were congruent or equal in size, we would use the equal sign, but a little squiggly on top. Now, because we're working with similar shapes, so they have the same proportion to each other, but they're not exactly equal, we just use the squiggly. Okay. The order of the letters in the name of each triangle determines which sides and angles correspond. Obviously, we'll work with more than triangles, but just for now, we're going to work with triangles here. Okay. To write a similarity statement for the triangles, I would first just start off with writing that triangle blank is similar to triangle blank. And then I need to figure out which angles correspond. If I start with A, I can see that has one little arc and a dash through it. So that would be corresponding and equal to Z. If I put A first, then I need to put Z first. Then if I go to B, that's the right angle. So that would correspond to X. That's also the right angle. So I'd say B goes next. So therefore, X needs to go next. And then C would correspond to Y. The thing is, though, they don't have to go in that exact order, as long as they follow the same order. And what I mean by that is, if I had stated that triangle blank is similar to triangle blank, and if I had started with angle C first, well, if I started with angle C, then I would have to start with its corresponding angle, which is Y. And then if I went to A, well, A and Z correspond to each other, so I have to put Z next. And then B would be the third corner, so I have to put X in there. So the order of the angles matter. What I'd like you to do is stop the video and then write the third way, or a third way, to write these similarity statements. Now that you've done that, we're going to move down, and what we can see is the side lengths. Okay, so first thing we have to do is figure out, okay, which sides correspond to each other, and hopefully they all have the same scale factor. Usually how I do this is I state that the shortest goes with the shortest, the longest goes with the longest, and then the medium size goes with the medium size, especially if I have a triangle like this. What I then do is I start with some corner. Okay, if let's say I'm starting with A, I realize that A is between the two longer sides of this triangle. So then I'm going to go over to the other triangle. I look for the two longer sides, 16 and 20. That would be D. So A and D would be the two corresponding angles. And I can start my similarity statement. Triangle blank, similar to triangle blank. And I'll put down A and D right away. Then I'll go to, let's say if I go to angle B. Okay, I'll give that a double arc just to show that it's a different measurement than angle A. Angle B is between the two shorter sides. So I'll go over here, two shorter sides, 8 and 16. E, therefore B and E would be equal, and they correspond to each other. And then lastly, obviously, C will give it triple arc, and F give that a triple arc, just to show that they are equal as well. So C and F. If you want to, go ahead and stop and just write one more similarity statement. As long as the order matches up, you should be okay. Okay, now one more note. I realize that you might be thinking to yourself, okay, that was easy to see. I could see which ones are corresponding to each other because it's very apparent that B and E would be the same size, and A and D would be the same size. That is true. But sometimes I'm going to give you tricky problems where you cannot tell which ones are the long sides, which ones are the short sides by the way it looks. I'm going to give you bad numbers. So even though it's going to look like it's the shorter side, you actually have to look at the numbers that I give you on those sides. So that is why I shared that way or that method for figuring out which angles are equal to each other. Moving on. I want you guys with your team to stop the video and determine which of these would actually work. DOG and CAT, would those work? No, they wouldn't. DOG and CTA, would those work? Yes. OGD and ATC, OGD, ATC, they would not work. But DGO and CAT would work. So just numbers 2 and 4. Flipping to the next page. Here is how you would use the similarity statements to determine which side lengths are corresponding to each other. Now, like I said, sometimes you can just kind of tell. From the looks of this, it looks like 6 would correspond to 9 and 12 would correspond to X. But it's not always going to be like that. So you want to use the similarity statement to make sure. Okay? Now, here's the deal. If I'm looking at X, that is on side JK. If I look at my similarity statement, JK are the first 2 letters. So I'm going to look and see what are the first 2 letters of the other rectangle. That would be AB. These 2 sides should correspond to each other according to the similarity statement. If I look at A to B, it is 12, and then J to K, that is X. So they would correspond to each other. Then if I look at JM, J to M would be the first to the last in the second rectangle. So I go to A and D, the first to the last and the second. JM, A to D would be 6. So those correspond to each other. Now that I know which sides correspond to each other, go ahead and set up your equal ratios and then solve for X. Or if you want to use scale factors, that's fine as well. Okay, now try the next. I'm going to do this kind of silently, so I'm going to just be underlining which sides correspond to which according to the similarity statements. I'm going to match them up with the lines by connecting, setting up a ratio, and so forth. Those of you guys in the back of class, if you want to just kind of work together, or if anybody else wants to kind of work together, that's fine. If you need, then you can watch what I'm doing. Make sure that you're kind of following my steps. Oops, made a mistake. Alrighty, sorry about that, guys. That would be Y to Z. That corresponds to OP. And then X to Z would correspond to N to P. Now that I have that, I'm going to do W over 5 equals 12 over 3. Cross multiply, divide. W equals 20. Sorry about that mistake. Moving on. Once again, should work out the same. PR. P to R would be first to last. G to I would be first to last as well, so those will correspond to each other. Then I have 7, which is on GH, first two. So first two of the other would be PQ. Sure enough, I have that. Very nice. Not too bad. If I do N over 3, right over left, then I have to set that equal to 16 over 7. Cross multiply, and we're going to get 7n equals 48. And then divide by 7. You get n equals whatever 48 divided by 7 is. I guess we could do 6.86. But I would take either of these answers. I'll be honest, I probably prefer 48 over 7. Okay, and then here is the notorious last one. This is the one where everybody might want to pay attention, because this is where people start forgetting to look back at the similarity statement to make sure. Okay, so we're going to say that M, what we want to know is on X to Y. Look at X to Y, first two. That would correspond to AB. So that's going to correspond to 7. Connect them. And then we have 11, which is on XZ. First to last would correspond to AC. AC would be 10. All right, there we go. Those are the two pairs of sides that correspond. We don't even care about the 6. So I'm going to say M over 7 would equal, so if I did left over right triangle, I have to do left over right triangle. And then cross multiply, 10m equals 77. Divide by 10, m equals 7.7. The next one, I'm going to have you guys just kind of check your answers online. I'm not going to do these with you. All I'm going to say, though, is that you can find the skill factor in 2 ways. Okay. For the skill factor on these, as an example, since we know 18 and 12 correspond to each other, you could give me the skill factor as big over small or small over big. So 18 divided by 12 would equal 3/2, or 12 over 18 would give me 2/3. So that's just the way that you could do the other one. You could get the 2 different skill factors, whether you're enlarging or making it smaller. But check those answers online, because I am going to skip to the next ones here in the video. Because this is the one where I have to kind of remind, or may have to remind you, of which angles are going to be congruent. Okay, so the first thing I tell you to do is mark the following types of angles as congruent: the vertical angles. If you see some vertical angles, let's mark them. There we go. Then I say mark the alternate interior angles. Hopefully, any time that you see 2 parallel lines, you'll be looking for alternate interior angles or same side interior angles. We don't have any same side interior angles. So if you think of the alternate interior angles as kind of like the Z angles, the ones that are in the corner of a Z, then you can see, oh, okay, well, this one and this one would be equal. And then this angle and this angle would be equal. Now that I can see which angles are equal to each other, I can see which sides will correspond to each other. If I look at the angles and I say, okay, I have one arc here, two arcs right there, and in between that is my x side. I look over here at the triangle on the right, and I look for one arc and two arcs. The side that is between those is your 6, so x actually corresponds to the 6 side. And then you can do the same thing with 5, which is between the 1-arced angle and the 3-arced angle, and 7.5, which is between the 1 and 3-arced angles. So therefore, 5 and 7.5 correspond to each other. That is enough to solve for x. We have one pair that we know, one pair that we want to know. Set up the ratio. I could do x over 6 and then 5 over 7.5. Cross multiply, 7.5x equals 30. And then 30 divided by 7.5, I believe is 4. We could do the same thing with y. We know y has to correspond to 8. So if I set up a ratio with y and 8, y over 8, I'm doing right over left. And then I have to set that equal to right over left triangle. So maybe let's do 7.5 and 5 again. But notice that I had to flip it because we're going right triangle over left triangle. Sorry, that's a bad y. That looks like a 4. Okay. And then we'll cross multiply. 5y equals whatever 7.5 times 8 is, which is 60. Divide by 5 on both sides. And y equals 12. I am going to skip the next one for you guys because I believe in y'all, your ability to get the next one. And I actually believe in your ability to get the next one as well, but this is going to be the last one that I do on the video just in case. And it's very similar to the one that we just did. So if we know this is 45, the vertical angle is 45. I don't know why I wrote 44. 45 here. Okay. Then if we know these two angles add up to be 95, okay, then the third angle would have to add up to be 180. So 50 plus 45 is 95. Take that away from 180, and you would get 85 degrees. The other one, T, would also have to be 85 degrees. So we'll go with 85 in both those spots. And then we would see that if we're doing TRS, so T, and this is where I realize I made a typo. I apologize. We should be writing T, let's say TBM. Sorry about that, guys. TBM is similar to, and if we do TBM, then we have to do the corresponding angle CBA. Put a little triangle right there. And then lastly, you can set up the ratios for x. X does correspond to 8 because x is between the 85 and 45, and 8 is between the 85 and 45. And then I know 20 and 10 correspond because 20 is between the 45 and the 50, and 10 is between the 45 and the 50. Set up your ratio. X over 8 equals 20 over 10. That's one of the ratios you could solve. And then if you cross multiply and solve, x will equal 16. And then I will let you guys do the same thing for y. And that is it, guys. Hopefully you guys can work together to get through the rest of the ones that I skipped and also get the homework done so we don't have any homework for the weekend.